We have our game here called Ghost Run, and we've made it on blocks. We haven't used any graphics on it. It's a simple game where you dodge some enemies that come to you, and I can just show it real quickly that they come, and you use the buttons to avoid them. And by time they increase in speed and in quantity, and you will just dodge whenever they come to you. And you have 3 lives.
So I can see some counter in there. Is it the time or what is it?
The counter is the time and also the high score. The high score, we save the high score and then we display it on the console right here. You can see the high score. And you also have 3 lives. So if you get hit or hit the wall, you lose a life. And when you don't have any lives left, then the game just starts over. You can see here, if I just die real quick, then it just returns to the game menu. And here in the game menu, you can change between the different states. We have the start button or the start block here, and then you can change to the high score. If you press that, you can see all the different high scores we've had since the game launched. And you can see the current high score is 140, and you can see all the different tries that there have been since. And then you can just, in the game menu, you can just switch between the states pretty easily. And the character on top here shows on which state you're on.
And when you choose quit, what happens?
The quit, we haven't programmed that because we don't want any accidents to happen. Then the game quits. But
it should terminate the program when you press it. But we haven't
just shut down the program. We haven't programmed it for safety reasons. And in hardware, we have these buttons, interrupts. That we use to control the player in the game.
So I can see that you're using both the PC and the FPGA. So what happens on the PC and what happens on the FPGA?
The PC, we configure the interrupts it needs to use here. So, for example, we use the timer interrupt in here. So the code runs on top of what we have written, and we have button interrupts out here, which we program to these pins. So when we press, it knows which of the pins we have pressed.
Yeah, but I also saw that you show the high score on the PC.
Yeah. The high score it gets saved in an array of integers, and then we just print out the array. The array is limited to only 50 integers, but you can always make it bigger.
So the PC just uses a serial terminal, right? Yeah. There is no game logic, nothing in there.
No.
And the graphics all comes from the FPGA.
Yeah.
Right. From the Zybo board.
Yeah. And we also use VSync to make the gameplay very smooth. So that we're quite happy about that.
Okay. So what was the most difficult thing you did?
It's probably the configurations of the buttons. Because we had some problems that nobody seemed to have, so we didn't know what the problem could be, and after a couple of days we finally found out how to do it, and that helped the progress of the game go much faster.
We also used a lot of time to figure out how the display works, how we draw the squares that we want on the screen. It took a bit longer than we expected it to take, but once we figured it out, it was quite easy.
Yeah. So what's the thing you're most proud of?
I would say for myself that the gameplay is so smooth via the VSync, but also the buttons here that we made them work.
Not the buttons on the FPGA, but the external buttons right here. Because it's much better to play when we have buttons out here than just pressing on small buttons on the
game
board.
Is much more enjoyable when you have sort of a control in your hand and can play it freely than to have to press on the buttons on the board. It's not that great.
Okay. Can you show a test run where you try to show what the game can?
Yeah. Here we have the enemies come. It depends on the high score or the score you have right now. So the enemies keep coming, and the LEDs on the Zybo shows how many enemies there are. The last enemy will come after 50 seconds, or when you reach the score of 50. And and that's the fastest one and the highest level. So that's the most difficult part. Right now you just have 3 enemies moving randomly and 1 moving at the x-axis, depending on where you're positioned on the screen.
And each enemy has its own speed, so there is...
each enemy has its own speed. And you can see this one, it spawns where your y-axis is, or where you are on the screen.
And the movements of the enemies, are they totally random or are they predictable?
It's a little bit predictable because it will bounce the same way all the time. So you can learn the pattern if you play enough.
Mm.
But we made it so they don't exactly 45 degrees, so that would be pretty predictable. So we just, some of the degrees we took down and some of them we took up, so they move randomly, and it's harder to predict where they will come.
Also, when you die and you lose a life, our guy, the character you control, he spawns at random places on the screen.
Mm.
So, yeah.
Okay, thank you.